Another episode with me, Munwara Ali, here on a Saturday. I am here every Saturday morning now at 11 a.m. London time. So if you've never been here before, joining me on my episodes, welcome to the first episode. And I hope that I'm able to add some value to your leadership journey through some of the tips I'm going to share. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because that really helps me to spread awareness. And also like and comment. I'd be really grateful to hear your comments if you find my content valuable, helpful. So why am I here? I'm here on a Saturday morning, interacting hopefully and providing some value around managing strategically in the voluntary sector. So when I say voluntary sector, I mean the non-profits, community and voluntary organizations that you work in or you lead. I hope that I am able to shed some light to how best to manage strategically when you are working in that environment. So I delivered a workshop on how to manage strategically earlier this month, and also had a wonderful conversation yesterday with Jackie Grant, who is a menopause and weight loss expert, as well as being the chair of the Waltham Forest Women's Network. And there was a lot of key moments where I felt light bulb moments for me. I thought, okay, this is really adding value to what I usually say on a Saturday around managing strategically. So one of the things that Jackie highlighted in our live conversation yesterday was around the reasons why a lot of maybe chairs, or if you're a director or a CEO of a small organization, small charity or a voluntary community organization, you tend to have a lot of problems trying to fill gaps operationally. So Jackie was talking about how you end up doing all the operational stuff, so you don't actually have the time, because management committees are run by people that are giving their time voluntarily, and often people have the goodwill but they may not have the time, so therefore capacity becomes a big issue. So chairs or directors or CEOs might find themselves filling gaps often when they should be managing strategically. It is crucial and key to an organization's success for their senior manager to be managing strategically. And just to give you the other thing that Jackie didn't mention actually was personal development. There is no investment in developing people at the top. It's very, very rare that organizations put any emphasis on developing people that are at the top. And this is another reason why it becomes very difficult to manage strategically, because our sector doesn't dedicate any importance to providing investment in those managers. And so therefore, sometimes people end up in roles that they've transitioned into as the organization has grown, but haven't necessarily had the right training or investment put into them. So I think that's a really important point for you to make note of, because if you are someone who runs a voluntary organization, a community or small charity, it's really, really important that you pay attention to the investment that you should be making towards your senior leaders. And just to give you a recap, so I talk about 3 ways to manage strategically. And the last 2 weeks, I covered first key, which was around research and how important research is to understand the bigger picture. It is crucial for you to understand the bigger picture to know what the landscape is what lies ahead and how you should be making or adapting your business, your organization, according to that. So I covered that in 2 Saturdays ago. So if you're curious and you want to know more, you can find those episodes on my channel right here. Go back to a couple of weeks ago on Under Lives, and you will find those sessions, those episodes. So that was the first key way to managing strategically. The second key way to managing strategically was marketing. So I spoke about marketing extensively as a way to informing and also demonstrating impact of your work to the wider community as well as donors and those who could potentially be funding you in future. It's very important to be visible, because if people don't see you, then you don't exist. And visibility becomes a big mission in this sector when most of our time and energy is spent towards firefighting and saving lives or helping the most vulnerable. However, I do feel that those in kind of senior roles should make a point of managing strategically, and the way to do that is through marketing. So that's like the second key. That's a summary of the last two key ways that you can manage strategically that I mentioned in my last two episodes. Today, I'm going to cover the third key way, and that is how to access resources. Because resources are just as important as research, understanding the bigger picture, marketing, and demonstrating impact. The third key way is knowing how to access resources. And there are several ways to do it. The most obvious one is funding. And there are lots of ways to access funding or to do fundraising. Challenge events, something you can find a little bit more about on my channel. Challenge events are a great way to generate supporters for your work, but also funding to deliver your work. So if I give you an example, and those who are familiar with my work, you will find on my channel a lot of information around the fundraising and mountain climbing and challenge events that I have been involved in and have had a huge impact in building homes for single parent women in Bangladesh. Last week, we completed one house for a woman and her daughter and grandchild who live in poverty-stricken area of Bangladesh. And a couple of days ago, we've just started building the second home, and all of that money was raised through challenge events or crowdfunding. The other one was crowdfunding using Just Giving, using a Just Giving page and asking your network to donate. So that's for very, very small organizations, tend to put a lot of emphasis on using crowdfunding, but crowdfunding can also be quite fun if you add a challenge to it. For example, a mountain climb or something like that. So that's just a few examples. So how else do you access resources? I think the key to accessing resources is asking. And I feel that sometimes in our sector, we're not great at asking until we are absolutely in dire situation. And in fact, I would say controversially, that you probably are often pretending to be okay when you're not okay as an organization. And I say this with a funder hat on as well, because I've been on panels where organizations have submitted applications and suggested that they are performing in XYZ way, when in fact they've been seriously lacking capacity. And that is not authentic and questions integrity. But equally, I do get it why some organizations, the smaller ones, do that, because we're afraid of being judged and being turned down if we say that we haven't got the right infrastructure in place, or we haven't got all the policies in place, etc. But I can tell you from a funder's perspective, you're better off saying you don't have those things, because then you're being honest and you're more likely to be funded to help you put those systems in place. It's better to be honest and straightforward about where you're at, so that that can help you get to where you want to be, instead of pretending to be where you want to be but actually not being there yet. Okay, so apologies if I'm offending you, but you've got to know the truth and you've got to know how funders are thinking, right? So accessing resources, I can't begin to emphasize, there are a number of different organizations where you will find grant funding. Your local authority is a really good start. So if you go to the local authority's website or your local CVS, where you will get access, or you at least get to know what funding is out there. So you've got the challenge events, the crowdfunding, which volunteers can set up, and then you have the formal bidding processes, which normally come through a CVS or your local authority, or like if you are signed up with any particular organization, like NCVO or the Civil Society, then you will receive e-bulletins that has a list of funders or funding that is available. The other way to manage strategically when it comes to resources is collaboration. Do not underestimate the power of collaboration. Somebody out there or another organization out there has what you need. And sometimes we need to think, and this is what managing strategically is all about. It's about putting time and energy into the thinking before we start acting. So you've got to think about what you as an organization have that is your unique selling point that you could then barter and do an exchange with another organization. So, for example, if your organization is great at, I don't know, catering or something, you could collaborate with another organization and do an exchange. And in return for you doing a bit of catering for them, they could do a bit of marketing for you. That kind of thing. So collaboration has a huge power to leverage resources that you need for your organization. So that's just one example of how you could be a lot more strategic in terms of how you access resources. The other, I said earlier, you've got to ask. You've got to ask the right people, but I cannot begin to emphasize how much what you get is very much dependent on what you ask for. If you don't ask for, if you're too busy trying to cover your own feelings of insecurity by almost giving the impression that you have certain systems in place that you don't have, then you aren't going to send a message that you need help. And in that case, like the rest of the world sees you as a performing organization, they don't know what resource you need. So I think there's a power in being vocal about what you need and asking for help. That is my third key towards accessing resources, because yes, you will find like grant funding funders out there, but the amount of benefits you can get from just like doing skills exchanges and collaborating with other organizations. We recently did an event at the Community Hub, and we collaborated with the VCS leadership group. And we found that when we merged or joined hands in terms of our capacity, we ended up delivering an amazing event, which normally we would say the capacity is simply not there. But because we joined hands and because there were so many people doing different parts of the event planning and organizing, we were able to deliver an amazing event. So that's my point around funding. Not sure if I've left anything behind or out, but I hope that this will help you when you're managing strategically. And I hear, and I have to repeat something that Jackie Grant said yesterday, which was around not necessarily lack of knowledge in managing strategically. We all know in the voluntary sector we need to manage strategically, but in the absence of having the right resources and in the absence of being able to work to a similar kind of structure as maybe the public or private sectors, it's hard for us to emphasize, or it's hard for us to put the time and energy that strategic management requires. We're often firefighting. Our work isn't always, or the pace of our work isn't always dictated by what our internal organizations or our organizations internally require. The pace is quite often determined by what's going on in the community. We work with vulnerable communities, and whenever there's a crisis, we have to often prioritize and deal with the managing that crisis, and that can take up a lot of our time. And also, like it's like being a hamster on a wheel, because our priorities will suddenly change, and then making sure that everybody in the organization is pulling in the same direction. That's not an easy task to constantly be changing and adapting and remaining agile. But the voluntary sector is amazing at being agile and adaptable to the environment that we work in. So give yourself a lot of credit for what you do and your work in the sector, because you're doing an amazing job. And we know that the community needs us at times of crisis, but that means we need to have our own house in order, which means being more strategic and managing strategically as well as managing operationally. I hope you found my episode today useful and helpful. Any comments would be most appreciated, and I wish you a great weekend. Till next Saturday. Bye-bye.